Welcome to the Microsoft IT Pro Podcast, a show about Office 365, Azure, and the IT Pro and end user side of life. Each week, we'll discuss a different topic or recent news related to Office 365 and Azure and how it relates to you as an IT Pro. The MS IT Pro Podcast is never longer than 30 minutes, so let's get started. How's it going this morning, Scott?
Not too bad. I'm awake. I'm trying something new this morning. So instead of coffee, I'm living in the future. I'm doing my nutritionally complete Soylent.
Are you awake? Is it working?
I'm still alive. It hasn't killed me yet.
That's good to hear. I am not doing any such thing. I am still drinking coffee.
Yeah, well, as long as we can move you on to Mountain Dew after this, you'll be all set.
Exactly. So, what do you want to talk about today?
I think today we're going to change it up a little bit and talk about some Azure stuff. So why don't we talk about getting started with Azure?
All right. Getting started with Azure is always a good place to start.
Yes, you have to start at the beginning before you can get to the end.
Yeah, exactly. And for all you Office 365 users, don't tune out because, as you've heard in other episodes, Azure is a really big part of Office 365. So you're definitely going to want to know about getting started with Azure. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Azure and Office 365 when you combine them together.
Absolutely. So actually, that's a good point. If you're coming from Office 365 land and you happen to be a global administrator in your tenant, you might have noticed down under your extra portals and services. So you go all the way down to the bottom where you, in the admin portal, where you go ahead and open up ECP or SharePoint Online or your Skype for Business tenant management. There's an option in there that actually says AzureAD. And if you click on that and you've never followed through the wizard to actually go ahead and provision your subscription, you're missing out on a little bit because that's how you get back to that free subscription that backs your Azure AD. Or if you had another Azure subscription, you might have added yourself in through a backdoor or something like that. But it is definitely one of those kind of core fundamental things. So I guess one of the big things with getting started is you have to have a subscription to all this stuff, right? So like I just mentioned with Office 365, you do get that free Azure AD tenant, and that tenant's backed by a subscription. So you can go ahead and do it that way. There's a bunch of other different subscription types that you can go ahead and pick up as well, right?
Yeah. So there's, like you said, there's that free one. And I know they changed it a while ago. They used to, I remember, still make you enter a credit card to get to your free Azure AD tenant, and then you just had to not use anything. Now, they don't do that anymore. You just get right in, and it's a whole special URL and everything. But like you said, if you want to go beyond Azure AD, start spinning up some other resources, one, you can just go sign up for a subscription. You can do a 30-day trial. You get so many credits. You do have to put in a credit card so that if you do want to start using it beyond your credits, you can. The nice thing is even though you put in a credit card, you spin up a trial, they're not going to charge you. They actually put a limit on it. So if you run out of credits on your trial, you're not going to just immediately start billing your credit card. Your trial's just going to stop working. You won't be able to use any resources until you say, hey, remove this limit. Let me start charging my credit card. Another option is you have these dev test lab concept of a subscription too. And I know you've used this one a lot, Scott. It's really nice. It takes away, it helps make it a little bit cheaper to get started with Azure if you're going to use it for a dev test environment, because you still have to pay for the resources you use, but it takes away some of that additional cost. I believe it essentially eliminates the licensing cost of the Windows software, of SQL Server, of SharePoint, and you're just paying for your resource usage, not some of those extra costs that are actually associated with a normal subscription that you're going to be doing stuff in production with.
Other way around. So Dev Test is a little bit different. You're still paying for a subscription. You are not paying for the Dev Test service, that wrapper and management layer, but you will pay for the underlying resources. So if you provision a Windows VM and you're in a PayGo subscription, you're still doing that PayGo rate to go ahead and get in there and make that stuff happen. So effectively what you end up with is you have free subscriptions. So maybe you go ahead and do something like your Azure AD with Office 365. There are some other services in Azure that can be free as well, though. So there's things like the Azure App Service can be zero cost per month. You want a free website and you're underneath the constraints and limitations, you can go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and do pay-go subscriptions, so basically pay as you go. So there's a posted pricing rate and table from Microsoft. Everything's priced per region, so costs vary between deploying something in APAC or EMEA versus even the East or West Coast of the United States. And then you can also do some discounted pricing along the way on things. So if you are of enterprise agreement customer and you've signed an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, you've effectively committed to a yearly commit on spend, you are going to get a discount on the rate you pay against Azure resources that way. You can do things also, if you are an MSDN subscriber, you potentially will have some Azure credits coming at you that way, effectively free, kind of quoted and limited off the top. And then there's this thing called IT Pro Cloud Essentials as well, which can give you a very, very minimal $25 a month credit for up to 6 months for an Azure subscription. So a bunch of different ways to get in there and start playing with it and kind of see what's going on. Like you mentioned, no matter what, you do need a credit card. You may or may not be charged depending on how you choose to use the service once you go past some of those credits and time periods associated with them.
Yeah, I know one other way. I've been even looking at getting Azure subscriptions lately too is using the CSP program, going through some of those cloud solution providers. I think some of them will be able to give you a little bit of a discount on some of the Azure subscriptions as well. If you're a little bit smaller, don't necessarily have an EA with Microsoft, go look at some of those CSPs that can essentially resell Azure. I know I signed up to do it. I'm doing it with a few of my clients, looking at how that all works, working as a CSP. So that's another way to do it, to get a subscription, maybe get a little bit of a discount on it.
Yeah. And one other one, if you are a business owner and you have a business where you are going to be potentially building solutions on top of Azure for your clients, so maybe you're an ISV or a partner and you're doing delivery that way, Microsoft does have a program called BizSpark as well, which will go ahead and potentially offer you a huge amount, really free Azure credit, just kind of sitting there waiting to use. It is a program that you do have to qualify for. You've got to kind of go through an enrollment process, things like that, but it is another avenue.
Yeah, I did that for a while with my business. It has since run out. It's kind of sad. I have to pay a little bit more for some of my Azure stuff now, but I liked it. It works really well. Like you said, if you're a business getting started, go check out the BizSpark program.
Yeah. All right. So we go ahead, we go to the Azure portal and we say, I want to sign up for a new subscription. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the portal, create a new subscription. And I'm sitting there, I've put my credit card in. Now I've got this blank slate in front of me. What should I start looking at? What should I do?
So like you said, there's a bunch of different options. I honestly have no idea how many services there are in Azure anymore. I think it's
too many.
Yeah, I think it's north of 500, may even be north of 600. Who knows? But it's going to kind of depend on what you want to do. Like you said, Scott, you have several free options. There's some free options around some website hosting, some free options around Azure automation, which essentially involves running PowerShell workflow in Azure. So there's obviously constraints, limitations around some of those free services, but there's that aspect of it where it's the software as a service. Whether it's running workflows, another one is Logic Apps, hosting websites, that type of stuff. Another avenue you can go is virtual machines. So maybe you're not quite ready to dive into the world of, hey, I'm using SQL as a service, and I'm using Logic Apps as a service, and I'm using a website as a service. I just want my plain old virtual machine. It runs Windows. I can install whatever I want to on it. I can do whatever I want to on it. The only constraints are the processing power. You can also spin up virtual machines in Azure. Looks like they start as cheap as like $13 a month. Mm-hmm. Trust me, you're not going to get anything fancy for $13 a month. It's probably going to be less than a gig of RAM and maybe a core of processor. But you can start it. If you're running a super lightweight machine that just needs to do a teeny tiny bit of processing, this is a good way to go. So it spans the gamut in the type of services you can run, you can utilize. The nice thing with all of them is they bill per usage. So even with a virtual machine, I probably have 30 or 40 virtual machines all running up in Azure now, or all not necessarily running, all in Azure, running different versions of SQL, of SharePoint, etc. When I need to test something out, use a specific version, I spin up my virtual machines, I use them for a few hours, I shut them down. I only pay for those few hours that those virtual machines are turned on. And even with the software as a service, it's very similar to that. If you start getting into the next tier of Azure automation, for instance, you pay based on the number of minutes the PowerShell is actually running. So it's not, hey, I'm going to pay, let's compare it to Office 365. I'm not going to pay $12 a month and get all these resources, and it's going to be $12 a month whether I use none of them or whether I use all of them. It's completely pay based on your usage, which for someone like me, I'm a small business. I don't have enough money to have 30 virtual machines running on any machine anywhere. It's really nice to just be able to spin them up for a little while, pay for a couple hours of usage, shut them back down, and not have to worry about massive costs of hosting that many VMs anywhere.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. So one of the unique things about Azure, particularly when it comes to pricing, you do have this wide platform, right? So like you mentioned, you have infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and software as a service, and you potentially mix and match across all those things. But quite often when it comes to something like infrastructure as a service and compute, Azure's pricing is going to be equivalent to AWS's, who is going to be equivalent to GCP, Google Cloud Compute, right? You'll kind of get all that going. But when you look at a vendor like AWS, if I have to spin up a VM and that VM runs for 5 minutes, I'm going to get charged for an hour. If I need to run a VM for 5 minutes in Azure, I'm only going to get charged for 5 minutes. So it is a much closer to the core kind of consumption billing model. So depending on your needs and what you have to do, you can really dial in a lot of that stuff to achieve some cost savings over time. Just in regards to kind of getting started and hopping in, Microsoft does offer a bunch of documentation to kind of ramp everybody up, no matter who you are. If you're an IT pro and looking to do IaaS, maybe you're an identity geek and you want to learn about all this identity management in the cloud. You're a developer and you've heard about this serverless thing. So they kind of focus on a couple of those core workloads for getting started. These are literally demonstrations they run where within 5 minutes, you can be up and running with a Windows Server virtual machine, or maybe Linux is your thing. So they have demos for setting up Linux virtual machines all the way to, once I provision that machine, connecting and managing it with SSH and getting in there. For developers, if you're doing a web app, they have a great 5-minute tutorial on how to spin up a web app with Node.js and the Azure App Service. Or if you're more on the .NET side of things, even just a regular vanilla ASP.NET web app, go ahead and spin that up. One of the other things that they have, so you talked about like Azure automation and that kind of consumption model for the resourcing what I've got going on. A lot of developers might be interested in something, or even the IT pros, like Azure Functions and serverless computing. So if you've ever been doing something over in Office 365 land, like Microsoft Flow, it would really behoove you to go ahead and learn about things like Azure Functions, because those become kind of a key point of extending out your solutions and building everything out. So literally you can go to this webpage and it has, 5-6 videos on it. You spend half an hour watching it and you'll be empowered to create VMs. So going through and kind of learning about some of those core infrastructure as a service principles. You can do some of the PaaS-ish service, platform as a service, in the form of Logic Apps or Azure App Service. You can do data with SQL or some of the relational database services, and even things like serverless computing, which I think is hugely powerful. And then there's deep dives for developers or IT pros, depending on which path you want to go down from there.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break. Again, we have BitWizards as our sponsor. Big thanks to them. Let's take a quick break, hear a little message from them, and we'll be right back.
You love technology, so do we. You're an experienced IT pro. We respect that. You're a problem solver. We've got clients. You need a tan. We've got a beach. You love Azure. We love Azure. At BitWizards, we've won Florida Trend Magazine's Best Companies to Work For 8 years running and have been a Microsoft Gold partner since 2001. I don't know about you, but it sounds to me like we were meant for each other. Go to bitwizards.com/cloudsmith to introduce yourself.
And we're back.
And we're back. So one other thing with getting started, Scott, is we've talked about all of these different services. You can spin them up. They might all be different prices. Like we said, VMs start at $13 a month. They ramp up to, you could spend over $1,000 a month just on one VM if you spin up the biggest ones. Some of these services, all this different stuff, all has different prices associated with it. Is there any way to kind of get an estimate before I go throw my credit card in there and spin up a whole bunch of stuff of how much might this actually cost me to run all this stuff in Azure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, it's hard if these vendors aren't transparent with some of that. Microsoft does have a pricing calculator. They fully publish all the pricing. It is real-time pricing. So if a price happens to change in something like US East versus US East 2 for virtual machine deployments for a given size, that's reflected pretty quickly within the calculators and things like that. So if you have a potential workload, you can go ahead, dial it in, take a look and see what that's going to look like. You can also do things, if you don't know exactly what your architecture is going to be, you think, maybe I need a VM and maybe I need a database. Like maybe you're doing this traditional, 3-tier application thing and you want to stand something up to support that. It could be a little bit different in cloud land to do that, right? Availability is different. How, when, where, why these things run. All that can just be a little bit different if you've never done it before. So Microsoft does publish a metric ton of reference architectures, and they're absolutely awesome. So if you go out to the reference architectures and take a look, they'll have everything from how to spin up an identity management solution to, hey, I'm designing this workload and it's going to run a web server, but it's Linux, so it's going to be a LAMP stack. So how can I do that? How do I think about multi-tiers? So you can actually get a nice pretty picture and then take that over to the pricing calculator and go ahead and pump it in and get an idea of what things are going to run you and what they're going to cost. The thing that I caution with the pricing calculator, a lot of people tend to look at the numbers in there and they go, wow, this is really expensive. Usually it's not that expensive if you think about what you're actually paying for your other resources, but it also tends to be worst case pricing. So what I mean by that is if you go in, like you mentioned, you shut your VMs down and deallocate them so you don't have to pay money. Well, if you go into the pricing calculator and you say, I want to add a VM in its default state, it's going to run for 744 hours, basically 24/7 for a month. So you're going to get the monthly price back out of the calculator. If you only run that VM for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, well, that changes things up pretty quickly because you just went from 700 hours down to 160, right? So making those changes and tweaking it can help you dial it into what it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning there, and I wanted to go back to it, is the idea of Azure regions. You made a quick comment there of you can look at the pricing in East US versus East US 2. If you're just getting started with Azure, I know that's one thing that it's documented, but it isn't always super apparent that Microsoft has this idea of, I think they're up to maybe 38 regions now. And based on the region that you spin these resources up in, the pricing can change. So pricing may not be the same in East US versus West US, or like you said, East US versus East US 2. So as you're looking at this, obviously somewhat of what region you pick may be dependent on your location. Maybe you want it to be in a region close to you, but some of that pricing can vary across regions. The other thing that can vary across those regions is what services are actually available. So as you're spinning up different resources, thinking about how you're going to architect all of this, how you're going to plan it all out, be aware that you may pick a West US region and go to spin up a service and not see it. And you're like, well, what the heck? I know the service is available. I know it's out there. Maybe it's just not available in West US. Maybe you have to be in East US, or maybe you have to be in East US 2. Again, that's in the US. I know there's also regions in other countries, and we can put a link to the show notes of where all the regions are. But if you're in some other countries, some of those services and the availability of them may change as well based on what region you're in.
Absolutely. So you don't only have to understand cost, but you do have to understand what you're looking for from a pure availability characteristics, or even maybe how close I want to have these things available to my customers. So if you're a company doing business on the east side of the US, but the majority of your clients are in Europe, you really might want to look at deploying to European data centers. And that's going to have some cost impacts. It might have impacts on availability of services, things like that. So we'll make sure to include that kind of product availability by region matrix that Microsoft publishes out there, just so people can see what's going on across all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do we need to think about when we're getting started with Azure? I know there's the whole navigation through the management portal, but that's kind of hard to do over audio.
It is, but there's actually a great video. So there's a really nice 10-minute walkthrough that they went ahead and recorded for how to go ahead and make that happen. So we'll make sure to go ahead and include that as well. If anybody wants to know how to walk around both really the new portal, the old portal's kind of still hanging out there. I think one of the other things is before you kind of have to jump into a lot of this stuff, but it's easy to have it run away from you, and you'll start clicking around in something like the portal and you'll see an option and say, hey, I don't know what that does. Microsoft's very good about publishing the documentation for all of this. So the documentation portal for Azure is just docs.microsoft.com / your language, so ENUS / Azure, and go ahead and get out there. Read the documentation. If you ever find an error in the documentation, it's all hosted in GitHub. So you can actually go ahead and edit that page real time and submit a pull request against it. I think that's one of those really powerful community things that Microsoft's gone ahead and enabled with all this stuff to go ahead and just get you in there, get you deep, and see what's happening.
You mentioned another one in here. I was just looking through our notes about Azure newsletters, this azureweekly.info.
So yeah, we always get the question, how do you keep up with all this stuff? Newsletters are definitely a great way to do that. One of the best ones that I found for Azure, it just, it'll land in your inbox once a week. So it's the Azure Weekly newsletter. So you go to azureweekly.info and you sign up for this thing, or they have a Twitter account. You can follow that, how you want to do it. But they'll basically go through, they kind of talk about it in the context of, hey, we talked about what's going on in PaaS, but really they cover everything. So for instance, if I look at last week's newsletter, so it's got everything that happened just in the news. It's got all the new compute stuff that came out. So everything from design patterns under compute to, this release of new 4 terabyte disk sizes, networking, storage, web, mobile. If containers are your thing, usually there'll be something in there. It's just a great, great resource to sit down and say, I want to dial into this area, see what's going on, see what's happening. And you can also go back and look through the archive and the past stuff. I can't speak too highly enough of that one. It's a great resource.
Yeah. Another one I've found is there's a buildazure.com. They also have a weekly newsletter. That's another one I follow. So that's another one. Again, go check it out. They'll send out a weekly newsletter. They have weekly blog posts. Those 2 resources, ton of information about what's coming out in Azure, what's changing, different blog posts. Yeah, you can get a lot of information.
Yeah, I think one of the other things you can do too, so I've talked a lot about where Microsoft kind of hosts videos to get people going, because a lot of this stuff is visual. It's not so much read something, it's kind of watch a little snippet and then go try it for yourself. Microsoft Virtual Academy has a ton of Azure training if anybody's interested in kind of the free route, or there are a bunch of third-party kind of training vendors on the side. So I know you do stuff for Opsgility. They are an excellent resource for Azure things, especially on the IT Pro side of the house. You've got Pluralsight, a little more developer oriented. You've got a bunch of different paths you can kind of go down to learn some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend all of those, any of those great resources. I think that might actually wrap us up. We might actually be done a little early today.
Go us.
Unless we want to ramble. We could talk about anything else. I got another Lego Saturn V in the mail the other day.
Did you?
I did.
Now they're just randomly showing up, huh?
Now they're just randomly showing up. Just every once in a while, another one shows up at the door. So we can call this a wrap unless you have more stuff you want to talk about.
No, I'm all good.
We can talk about object IDs not being the same in SharePoint Online, or being the same, not being unique.
I'd rather talk about my new home automation setup.
Oh, we could talk about that too. My coffee was all ready for me when I woke up this morning. Well, got out of bed.
Yeah, it happens. Now I can tell Alexa, hey, Dingus, tell Harmony to watch the movie, or to watch a movie. And because I got this new Harmony hub, so that'll turn my TV on It'll turn the stereo on. It'll turn the Apple TV on. It'll automatically move all the icons and select iTunes movies or like the TV app or Plex, whatever I've got plugged into Harmony that day. Go ahead and open it up. And then because I have the Hue bulbs downstairs, it will go ahead and dim all the lights down as well. And just kind of throw you into movie mode and get you ready.
Wow. I've heard about that Harmony Hub. I haven't gotten it yet. I might have to go give it a try.
They were on sale for Prime Day.
Oh, you didn't tell me.
Well, I was trying to spend all my money just on myself.
Got it. Yeah, I have an Alexa in the the Samsung smart things. So I can tell Alexa to turn on the coffee pot, turn off the coffee pot. Hooked it up to some dimmers and switches. So I went the opposite way. I didn't go with the smart bulbs. I went with smart switches. So I have some dimmer switches, some rocker switches where the switch itself is Z-Wave, and then the bulbs are just normal LED bulbs. So I just tell Alexa, dim the lights, turn on the lights, turn off the lights. It's slick. It's fun. I have fun with the home automation stuff.
Yeah. I found trying to teach the kids to do things and stuff. I walk around saying, hey, dingus a lot. Like, hey, do this, do that. Tell me my flash briefing, the weather, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and by the way, go ahead and make sure that the front door is locked and the lights are off and all those kinds of things. So certainly interesting.
Yeah. So have you ever walked into somebody's house to see if they have, because I think you can put a passcode on, so you have to actually approve a purchase with Amazon. But if someone doesn't do that, you could walk into their house and say, hey, Alexa, order 500 bags of flour, and just see if there's a dot around.
Piss some people off.
Yeah, everybody's Alexa's just ordered flour.
On that note.
There was a commercial that did that. I think it was with a Google Home. Anyways, yes, we're digressing. On that note, let's call it a wrap for today.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.